Hey guys, I just want to do a quick video on something that we can do in VBA. So what I'm hoping to do, and I had a friend ask me this the other day, she wanted to know if she had a list of items and she wanted to white out the numbers but keep the numbers within that cell, then how could she do that so that it would only show the letters? So as you can see, I've created just kind of a bunch of dummy data here. Um, and we're going to go ahead and take care of that in VBA. Now, if you've never done something like this before and you don't have this tab up here, this developer tab, then what you're going to want to do is go to File, then you can go to Options and go to your ribbon. And in the ribbon, you'll see that there's this box here that says developer. You want to make sure that's checked. I already have that, so I'll just hit cancel, but that should allow you to have this developer tab up here. Once you have that, you can go to Visual Basic, and that's going to open up this box over here for you. Once you do that, you can right click something like this workbook here, and then you can go ahead and insert a module. Now, we already have a module, so we'll just go ahead and get started. Now, since we're whiting out those numbers, we'll just call this whiteout. And then what we're going to want to do is create some variables for ourselves. So we'll go ahead and create last row, and we'll make that a long, which is just a data type that lets us store long numbers. We'll go ahead and create, current val as a string. We'll create val sheet as a worksheet, and we'll create a counter for ourselves. And we'll make that one a long as well. Now you do have the option with a bunch of these where I'm creating them as longs. You could create them as integers, take up a little bit less memory, but with modern data sets and modern computers, really you're not going to use up too much memory by using long, and it will save you trouble in the future with overflow errors. So the first thing we're going to want to do is determine where that last row for ourselves is. And the reason we do that is if we had a list of data like this and one of these happened to be blank, then if we only look at our current cells that have something in them and you're looping through those, it's going to stop right here and you would miss out on the rest of this data. So the best practice that I've found is to find the last row in that column and loop through all of them rather than looping through cells that currently aren't null. So we'll go ahead and create this last row. We'll go ahead and say cells rows dot count 1. And what that's doing is it's counting how many things are in that first column. So now we have that, and what we're going to want to do actually before that as well is set our sheet, and we called that val sheet, and we'll just say that is this workbook dot sheet. And since we haven't changed the name of our sheet, it is still the default sheet 1. And then what we can do there is take this val sheet variable that we just created and put that in front of it. And that helps you if you had multiple workbooks open. You don't want your code to be guessing which workbook it needs to be working in. We'll go ahead and set our counter variable to 1. and set our current value, our current val as we've named it, to val sheet dot cells counter, our variable, and 1 dot value. So now we'll get into the nitty-gritty and start our loop. So we would want to loop while we're not up to that last row. We'll go ahead and set our wend right here and make sure we don't create an infinite loop, because that's never a fun time. We'll make sure our counter is incrementing. Now let's create another loop within that loop to loop through each of those strings that we're looking at. We'll say for string counter equals 1 to the length of our current value. And we'll say if is numeric whoops, that's supposed to be mid. Our current value is what we're looking at, the string that we're currently looking at. We would want to start at our string counter value because we're looping through that string, and we would only be looking at one character at a time. And then we would close both of those and say what's going to happen if that is the case. So just to describe that again, what that's doing is looking at each individual string and saying if the current character, so that string counter is looping through each one and saying if that character is a number or is numeric, then we're going to do whatever we create right here. So we would say cells, whoops, if I can type, counter 1 dot characters string counter 1 dot font, because we're changing that font color, dot color equals VB white. And then we can close our if, and we can close our for loop. And now we would want to make sure that we're making all of that visible for ourselves. And really what we're doing here is we're making sure that we can increment to the next line. So while we're going through that while loop, each time we go through, we increment that counter, and then once that counter is incremented, then we want to grab the next string in that list. So we say current val, yep, I know, current val equals val sheet dot cells counter 1 dot value. So now we're looking at the next value. And just to make sure we're doing some best practices here, let's make sure we're getting the right cells there as well. So now if we start looking through that, it starts looping through and we see those numbers start to disappear. Comes down, it grabs the next string and it loops through again, and makes those numbers disappear. And then if we want to go through the whole thing all at once, we get all of it. So there you have it. Now, just to make it clear again, if we look at these, we still have those numbers in there. It's just simply changed the font color to white so that they're not visible. If you did need to end up actually separating those out, something you could do is maybe go through, concatenate a comma into here, and then use text to columns and end up separating those by a delimiter. But that's a completely different thing. So I hope this was helpful, and we'll talk to you guys later.